Whispers of Gold, a chronicle of Francisco Pizarro's Conquest of Peru. A Dream Forged in Steel. Panama, August 15, 1529. The humid air hung heavy, thick with the scent of sweat and the ever-present tang of salt. Francisco Pizarro, a man weathered by years spent exploring the unforgiving jungles of the New World, stood amidst a motley crew of adventurers, their faces etched with a mixture of hope and desperation. His gaze, steely and determined, scanned the faces of his men, each one a gamble, a wild card in the grand scheme he had set in motion. Rumors, whispers carried on the wind by native traders, spoke of a land bathed in gold, a kingdom so opulent it defied imagination, El Dorado. The very name ignited a fire in Pizarro's soul, a burning ambition that had consumed him for years. He dreamt of riches beyond measure, of a conquest that would etch his name in the annals of history, of a return to Spain a wealthy conquistador, a man of power and influence. But the path to El Dorado was fraught with peril. The vast expanse of the South American continent remained largely unexplored, a labyrinth of steaming jungles, treacherous mountains, and fierce indigenous tribes. The Spanish crown, wary of further expeditions after previous failures, had offered him scant support, a meager allotment of men and supplies, a gamble on a dream that seemed little more than a myth. Undeterred, Pizarro, fueled by his insatiable ambition, had forged alliances with other conquistadors, men like Diego de Almagro, a seasoned warrior, and Father Valverde, a priest whose piety masked a thirst for conquest disguised as conversion. Together, they had scraped together a meager force, a handful of horses, a few cannons, and a ragtag group of soldiers, many of them hardened veterans of past expeditions, others mere fortune-seekers lured by the promise of riches. This was Pizarro's day of reckoning. He addressed his men, his voice ringing with a practiced charisma. He spoke of the hardships that lay ahead, the dangers they would face, and the potential rewards that awaited them. He painted a picture of El Dorado, a land overflowing with gold, where streets were paved with the precious metal and palaces shimmered with unimaginable wealth. His words, dripping with calculated optimism, ignited a spark in the eyes of his men. The weariness etched on their faces momentarily forgotten, replaced by a glimmer of avarice. These were men who had gambled everything on this venture, men who craved fortune and a life beyond the drudgery of their existence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty plaza, Pizarro raised his sword. For El Dorado, he bellowed, his voice echoing across the gathering. A chorus of gruff shouts answered him, a cacophony of hope and desperation. The die had been cast. Francisco Pizarro, with a band of fortune-seekers at his side, had set sail for the unknown, embarking on a journey that would change the course of history. Into the Emerald Labyrinth. Ecuador, November 12, 1532. 3 years had passed since Pizarro's departure from Panama. The meager force, ravaged by disease, hunger, and skirmishes with indigenous tribes, had finally reached the coast of what is now Ecuador. The dream of El Dorado, once a shimmering beacon, now flickered like a dying ember. The initial bravado had been replaced by a gnawing sense of doubt. The promised land of gold seemed to recede further with every arduous step. The jungle, an emerald labyrinth teeming with unseen dangers, pressed in on them, a suffocating wall of vegetation and humidity. Supplies dwindled, replaced by a meager diet of scavenged berries and game hunted with dwindling ammunition. Discontent simmered amongst the men. Mutiny, a constant threat on such expeditions, brewed beneath the surface. Whispers of abandoning the quest and returning to Panama echoed through the campfires at night. Pizarro, however, remained resolute. His ambition, though tempered by hardship, refused to be extinguished. One sweltering afternoon, as they hacked their way through a particularly dense thicket, a group of scouts stumbled upon a sight that sent a tremor of excitement through the weary troops. A narrow path, barely visible beneath a canopy of leaves, snaked its way deeper into the jungle. This wasn't a random game trail. It was clearly man-made, a potential gateway to a hidden civilization. Hope, like a flickering flame, rekindled in their hearts. Could this be the path to El Dorado? Or was it just another cruel trick played by the unforgiving wilderness? Pizarro, his eyes gleaming with renewed determination, rallied his men. This path, he declared, his voice hoarse but firm, may hold the key to our destiny. We press on. With renewed vigor, they pushed forward, the oppressive jungle canopy filtering out the harsh sunlight. The path, narrow and winding, seemed to descend deeper into the heart of the unknown. The air grew thick with the scent of decaying vegetation and the incessant drone of unseen insects. An unsettling silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the rhythmic crunch of their boots on the damp earth. As dusk approached, casting long, spectral shadows across the path, they emerged into a clearing dominated by a sight that left them awestruck. A magnificent stone city, nestled in a verdant valley, rose before them, its intricate carvings and towering structures bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. This wasn't El Dorado, but it was undeniably a city, a testament to a lost civilization, a glimmer of hope in their desperate quest. Exhaustion momentarily forgotten, they stood transfixed, the weight of their journey momentarily lifted. Had they stumbled upon a forgotten kingdom, a source of riches beyond their wildest dreams? Or was this merely another pit stop on their arduous journey towards the elusive El Dorado? One thing was certain, their arrival in this unknown city would change the course of their expedition and, perhaps, the fate of an empire. Encounter in the Lost City, Ecuador, November 12, 1532. The imposing city, bathed in the fading light of the setting sun, sent shivers down Pizarro's spine. It wasn't El Dorado, the city of gold they relentlessly pursued, but its grandeur was undeniable. Towering stone structures adorned with intricate carvings dominated the verdant valley, a testament to a lost civilization that thrived long before the arrival of the Spanish. Cautiously, with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, Pizarro led his men forward. The once bustling path leading to the city was now eerily silent, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. Were they the first outsiders to set foot in this place in centuries? Or were they about to be met by the city's inhabitants? As they approached the city gates, massive structures carved from a dark, volcanic stone, a lone figure emerged from the shadows. An elderly man, adorned with vibrant feathers and intricate body paint, his gaze sharp and intelligent, surveyed the approaching conquistadors. The language barrier loomed large, a potential obstacle to communication. Fortunately, Father Valverde, ever the opportunist, stepped forward. Years spent amongst indigenous tribes had equipped him with a smattering of Quechua, the language of the Inca Empire. A tense exchange followed, a delicate dance of words and gestures. Pizarro, through Valverde's translation, explained their long journey, their search for El Dorado, and their awe at the magnificent city. The elder, who introduced himself as Atahualpa, the Inca Emperor, listened intently, his expression unreadable. Finally, Atahualpa spoke, his voice surprisingly melodic for one so weathered by time. He invited the Spanish into the city, offering them food and shelter. Pizarro, wary but sensing an opportunity, accepted. The gates creaked open, revealing a bustling marketplace filled with exotic goods and the murmur of unseen crowds. As they entered the city, a sense of wonder washed over the conquistadors. Everywhere they looked, marvels unfolded, intricate goldwork adorning temples, skilled artisans weaving colorful tapestries, and children playing amidst cascading fountains. This was no barbaric tribe. This was a sophisticated civilization, a stark contrast to the image they had conjured in their minds. The following days were a whirlwind of cultural exchange. Atahualpa, intrigued by these strange visitors from across the sea, offered them a glimpse into Inca life. Pizarro, in turn, shared stories of the Spanish Empire, its advanced weaponry, and its relentless pursuit of conquest. A palpable tension simmered beneath the surface of this newfound camaraderie. Pizarro, his avarice reignited by the city's wealth, saw the Inca Empire as ripe for the taking. Atahualpa, despite his outward hospitality, sensed the Spaniards' underlying threat. A storm, unseen but inevitable, was brewing on the horizon. One fateful afternoon, during a ceremonial feast hosted by Atahualpa, a misunderstanding shattered the fragile peace. A Spanish soldier, clumsy and intoxicated, toppled a golden statue revered by the Incas. Chaos erupted. Inca warriors, their faces contorted in rage, descended upon the conquistadors. Pizarro, caught off guard, could only watch in horror as his carefully constructed plan unraveled. The dream of a bloodless conquest, replaced by the brutal reality of war. The clash of steel echoed through the once peaceful city, the screams of the dying painting the vibrant city in hues of red. This wasn't the glorious conquest Pizarro had envisioned. This was the brutal underbelly of exploration, a ruthless clash of cultures fueled by greed and misunderstanding. The seeds of a long and bloody conflict had been sown, forever altering the course of history. A Pyrrhic victory, Cajamarca, Peru, November 16, 1532. The once majestic city of Cajamarca, now a scene of carnage, reeked of blood and burning flesh. The jubilant welcome feast had devolved into a horrifying massacre. Spanish steel, fueled by surprise and superior weaponry, had cut a bloody swathe through the ranks of the unsuspecting Inca warriors. Pizarro, his face grim, surveyed the battlefield. Victory, though costly, was his. Atahualpa, the mighty Inca emperor, lay bound and humiliated, a pawn in the conquistadors' ruthless game. The dream of El Dorado seemed closer than ever, but at a terrible price. The initial shock of the attack had given way to a chilling realization: they were vastly outnumbered. The Inca Empire, vast and powerful, would not surrender its riches without a fight. The easy conquest Pizarro had envisioned had morphed into a precarious situation, a gamble where a single misstep could spell disaster. The following days were a tense negotiation. Pizarro, fearing a full-scale Inca uprising, demanded an exorbitant ransom for Atahualpa's release, a room filled with gold to the height of a man. The Inca, despite their outrage at the emperor's imprisonment, scrambled to fulfill the outlandish demands. A steady stream of gold and silver flowed into the city, a testament to the Inca's wealth and Pizarro's insatiable greed. Despite the mounting treasure, a sense of unease gnawed at Pizarro. His advisors, wary of the growing Inca resentment, urged him to release Atahualpa and secure a peaceful passage through the empire. But Pizarro, blinded by avarice and fueled by whispers of even greater riches in the Inca capital of Cuzco, refused. One fateful night, a rumor, fueled by paranoia and miscommunication, reached Pizarro's ears. A vast Inca army, supposedly marching towards Cajamarca to liberate their emperor, was poised to attack. Fear turned to panic. Pizarro, convinced of an imminent betrayal, made a decision that would forever stain his legacy. On a trumped-up charge of conspiracy, Atahualpa was condemned to death. The once mighty emperor, stripped of his dignity and his power, faced a firing squad of Spanish arquebusiers. The crack of gunfire echoed through the city, a chilling symbol of the brutal conquest that had begun. The death of Atahualpa plunged the Inca Empire into chaos. Civil war erupted as rival factions vied for the throne. The path to Cuzco, though seemingly clear, was paved with uncertainty and the very real threat of a desperate resistance. Pizarro, his hands stained with the blood of an emperor, had secured a foothold in the Inca Empire. But at what cost? The dream of El Dorado, once a shimmering mirage, now loomed large, a prize to be claimed amidst the ruins of a once great civilization. The true test, the real conquest, had just begun. The long road to Cuzco, Peru, December 2nd, 1532. The shadow of Atahualpa's death hung heavy over the conquistadors as they embarked on their journey towards Cuzco, the Inca capital. The initial euphoria of victory had been replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. The vast emptiness that stretched before them mirrored the growing sense of isolation gnawing at Pizarro's heart. The Incas, once a proud and unified people, were now fractured. Civil war raged between rival claimants to the throne, a chaotic situation that both aided and complicated Pizarro's plans. While the fractured Inca leadership presented an opportunity for easier conquest, it also meant navigating a treacherous political landscape filled with shifting alliances and hidden agendas. The journey itself was an arduous one. The unforgiving terrain, a harsh tapestry of towering mountains, scorching deserts, and raging rivers, tested the limits of the conquistadors' endurance. Food supplies dwindled, replaced by meager rations of dried meat and whatever meager pickings they could forage along the way. Disease, a silent stalker, began to claim its victims, whittling down their already depleted numbers. Despite the hardships, Pizarro pressed on, driven by an insatiable ambition and the image of Cuzco, a legendary city rumored to overflow with unimaginable riches. He used the Incas' internal conflict to his advantage, forging alliances with one faction while ruthlessly crushing any opposition. The brutality of the conquest, a stark contrast to the initial promises of peace and cooperation, left a trail of devastation in its wake. Along the way, they encountered remnants of the Incas' brilliance, intricately constructed stone bridges spanning dizzying chasms, fertile terraces carved into the mountainsides, and magnificent temples dedicated to their sun god, Inti. These marvels, testaments to a lost civilization, served as a stark reminder of the immense wealth and power they were poised to claim. As they neared Cuzco, rumors reached them of a vast Inca army gathering in the city's defense. Panic rippled through the conquistador ranks. Were they marching into a trap? Had they underestimated the resilience of the Inca people? The dream of El Dorado, once a distant beacon, now seemed precariously close, yet tantalizingly out of reach. On a crisp December morning, with the snow-capped peaks of the Andes gleaming in the distance, the conquistadors finally caught sight of Cuzco. The magnificent city, nestled in a valley and adorned with golden roofs, shimmered in the sunlight. This was it, the culmination of their arduous journey, the potential gateway to El Dorado. But as they approached the city gates, a tense silence hung in the air. Would they be met with resistance or surrender? The answer to that question would determine the fate of the Inca Empire and rewrite the course of history. Siege of Cuzco, Cuzco, Peru, December 6, 1532. The once vibrant city of Cuzco, bathed in the harsh light of the Andean sun, stood eerily quiet. The approaching conquistadors, their armor glinting off the snow-capped peaks, found the city gates abandoned, a chilling sign of what awaited them within. Pizarro, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, ordered caution. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the bustling marketplace and the joyous celebrations they had heard described. Was this a trap? Or had the Incas simply abandoned their magnificent capital in the face of the approaching Spanish force? Slowly, cautiously, they marched into the city. Empty streets echoed with their footsteps, the only signs of life the scavenging birds circling overhead. Magnificent stone structures, adorned with intricate carvings and once shimmering with golden roofs, now stood silent and desolate. As they ventured deeper into the city center, a lone figure emerged from a deserted plaza. An old Inca priest, his face etched with grief and defiance, approached them. In broken Spanish, he spoke of the devastation wrought by the Civil War, the despair that had gripped the city, and the decision by the new Inca leader, Manco Inca, to retreat and regroup in the mountains. Relief washed over Pizarro, a temporary reprieve from the constant tension. Cuzco, the legendary city of gold, was theirs for the taking. His soldiers, weary but exhilarated, plundered the abandoned palaces, their greed a stark contrast to the haunting emptiness that pervaded the city. Despite the initial victory, a sense of unease lingered. The Incas, though defeated, were far from broken. Manco Inca, fueled by a thirst for vengeance, vowed to drive the Spanish invaders from his land. The whispers of El Dorado, once a distant dream, now seemed overshadowed by the harsh realities of conquest, the constant threat of rebellion, the unforgiving terrain, and the ever-present specter of disease. As his men reveled in their newfound wealth, Pizarro surveyed the city from the balcony of the Inca Emperor's palace. The snow-capped peaks of the Andes formed a majestic backdrop, but a hollowness gnawed at him. Was this the glorious conquest he had envisioned? Or was it a Pyrrhic victory, a triumph built on the ruins of a once great civilization? The weight of his decisions, the blood spilled, and the devastation he had unleashed settled heavily on his shoulders. The dream of El Dorado, once a shimmering mirage, now seemed shrouded in a veil of doubt. The true test, the real conquest of the Inca Empire, had just begun, and the cost of victory promised to be far steeper than he could have ever imagined. Whispers of Rebellion, Cuzco, Peru, December 15, 1532. 2 weeks had passed since Pizarro's bloodless capture of Cuzco. The initial euphoria of victory had given way to a gnawing sense of unease. The once abandoned city now bustled with activity, but the air crackled with tension. The conquistadors, their pockets lined with looted Inca gold, reveled in their newfound wealth, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Whispers, carried on the mountain winds, spoke of a growing Inca resistance led by the young and charismatic Manco Inca. Far from accepting defeat, the new emperor rallied his scattered forces, his anger fueled by the atrocities committed by the Spanish. Messages, carried by swift runners, spread throughout the empire, calling for a unified uprising to drive out the invaders. These whispers reached Pizarro's ears, casting a long shadow over his newfound sense of security. He fortified the city, transforming the magnificent Inca palace into a heavily guarded garrison. Paranoia gripped the conquistadors. Every rustle of leaves, every unfamiliar face, was seen as a potential threat. One starlit night, the simmering tension erupted into violence. Under the cloak of darkness, a massive Inca army, fueled by righteous fury, descended upon Cuzco. The deafening roar of war drums shattered the city's fragile peace. Flames erupted from strategically placed fires, casting an eerie glow on the ensuing chaos. The conquistadors, caught off guard and outnumbered, scrambled to defend the city walls. Cannon fire boomed, shattering the night air, while arquebus fire cut bloody swaths through the ranks of the attacking Inca warriors. The once majestic city became a battleground, its streets echoing with the screams of the dying and the clash of steel. The battle raged throughout the night, a desperate struggle for survival. Despite their superior weaponry, the Spanish were pushed back, their well-rehearsed formations crumbling under the relentless onslaught of the Inca army. Pizarro, his face grim with determination, rallied his men, urging them to fight for their very lives. As dawn approached, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, a stalemate emerged. Exhausted and bloodied, both sides retreated, leaving behind a battlefield littered with the dead. The once gleaming city walls bore the scars of the night's battle, a testament to the Inca's ferocity and the fragility of the Spanish conquest. The failed siege of Cuzco marked a turning point. The dream of an easy conquest had been shattered. The Incas, though weakened, had proven their resilience, their determination to reclaim their land burning brighter than ever. Pizarro, facing a long and bloody insurgency, realized that the true cost of El Dorado was far steeper than he could have ever imagined. The long shadow of war, Cuzco, Peru, December 20th, 1532. The aftermath of the siege hung heavy over Cuzco. Smoke still curled from smoldering ruins, casting a pall over the once vibrant city. The wounded groaned in makeshift hospitals, tended by overworked and weary surgeons. A tense silence had settled, punctuated only by the rhythmic hammering as the conquistadors repaired the city walls. Pizarro, his face etched with worry, surveyed the damage. The failed siege, a stark reminder of the Inca's resilience, had shaken his confidence. He had underestimated his foe, blinded by his greed for gold and the allure of El Dorado. News from the surrounding regions offered little comfort. Rebellions flared across the empire, fueled by Manco Inca's fiery pronouncements and the simmering resentment towards the Spanish invaders. The dream of a swift conquest had morphed into a seemingly endless war, a war that threatened to consume them all. Despite the bleak outlook, Pizarro refused to surrender to despair. He knew he had to act decisively to quell the rebellion and maintain a semblance of control. He dispatched his most trusted lieutenants to strategically important cities, hoping to establish a network of Spanish outposts and contain the uprising. However, the vastness of the Inca Empire presented a logistical nightmare. Communication lines stretched thin, messages arriving weeks, even months after they were sent. The Incas, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain and the support of the local population, waged a guerrilla war, striking Spanish outposts with hit-and-run tactics before disappearing into the mountains. The harsh reality of the situation began to gnaw at the conquistadors. The initial thrill of adventure had evaporated, replaced by a relentless fear and a gnawing sense of isolation. Disease, a silent stalker, began to claim its victims, further demoralizing the already depleted Spanish forces. One evening, as they huddled around a flickering campfire, a grizzled veteran voiced the growing sentiment. "El Dorado," he rasped, his voice laced with bitterness, "is just another cruel mirage. We've traded our dreams for a living hell." Pizarro, his own doubts mirrored in the soldier's words, could only offer a grim smile. The whispers of gold, once their guiding light, now seemed a distant memory. They were trapped in a brutal war, a war that had no clear end in sight. The shadow of war had stretched far beyond the walls of Cuzco, engulfing the vast expanse of the Inca Empire. The once mighty civilization, fractured but not broken, fought for its survival. And Francisco Pizarro, the man who had embarked on a quest for riches and glory, now faced the harsh consequences of his ambition. The end.